Good evening, everyone. Are we ready to get started?
Yeah.
We got a couple of, my name is Elmer Hill. I'm a Media Pass District Director for District 37, which has morphed into District 117 and 37. I, myself, and Nihal Tana will be doing this section, and I'm going to start sharing my screen. Can everyone see my screen? Good. Seeing a couple of heads nodding. So as we go forward, just wanted to kind of give you the protocol for this evening, just so that everyone is comfortable and can hear. If you're not speaking, please be sure to mute yourself. Keep yourself on mute unless you're speaking. The way that we prefer, we're going to make this as interactive as possible given the technology. So during the course of our session, if you have something, a question, please put it in the chat. Don't put it private. I think you only have the option to put it in public chat. So please go ahead and do that. And then we will work through the comments and questions as we proceed. As you see, this will be a joint presentation by myself along with Nihal Tana. I first want to just say congratulations to all of the individuals here who have officer roles. Officer roles is actually a leadership role for your club. And I like this statement from Jack Welch, which says, before you are a leader, success is all about growing yourself. When you become a leader, success is all about growing others. And this is true for all of the club officer roles that you have. So that certainly applies to secretary, treasurer, and sergeant at arms. Is what we're going to be working through today. This is going to be our agenda. We're going to start with secretary. That's going to be Nihal. Then we're going to move to treasurer, which I will handle, and sergeant at arms. Nihal will do a review for us, and then we're going to talk about resources that will be available. To introduce Nihal Tana is a distinguished Toastmaster. She started her Toastmasters journey in 2016 and very quickly was elected to be club president. And she helped the club get to distinguished status, president's distinguished status, within 16 months of that new club chartering. She went on to be an area director, earned area director of the year. She's been an assistant division director. And most recently, she was the District 37 administration manager. I would like to have Nihal take the role and talk to us about the secretary. Nihal.
Thank you so much, Elmer. And good evening, everyone. Thank you for making a choice to be here today. I promise I'm not going to bore you, and neither would Elmer. I would like to tell you that I have taken a few roles during my Toastmasters journey for past 3 years or 3.5 years. However, the very two important club officer role that I would tell you today, not because I'm presenting, but I would also tell you why are they important. One is president, and the second one is secretary. Why? Because these two are such an important role, not only from your club's point of view, but also from the district and Toastmaster International point of view. Why is it important from the club point of view? Is because secretary is the one officer who not only minds their own business and does their own thing and helps the club achieve the goals, but also works with the VPMs and VPPR and collaborates with them to help them achieve the goal. In addition, helps the treasurer as well. So that is the one entity who is universal, and they're very comfortable collaborating and impacting the other officer and their goals as well. Secondly, the reason secretary is important because when you have Toastmasters International Convention that happens once a year. And that's what Ramona was talking about a little bit ago. That's starting in August, on August 24th, Monday next week. During that time, the election takes place for international directors and vice president on a Toastmaster International on the world level. And secretary and president are the only people who can carry the proxy. And Elmer, please feel free to correct me if I'm outdated, because I'm really 90 years old and I forget things. So Elmer keeps me straight. So these are the two reasons I would say that secretary is one of the most important role among the club officer. As while Elmer would share the screen, excuse me, I am going to share with you not only what secretary role is, probably you have been there, you read the books, you read the manual, and there's no point in me repeating and boring you on a Thursday evening. But I'm also going to share with you why is it important, how can you be successful, and what are the things that's available for you to be successful in that role. So starting, secretary's job is very simple. Maintaining all the club records, managing club files, making sure handling all the correspondence, and taking notes during executive meeting. Now you need to know that maintaining club records is going to be easier for this term secretary. Why? Because we're no more going to be in in-person setup. So you have the ability to just go ahead and have a folder on your computer, or use a Google Docs, or use OneDrive, or any other software tool to have all the documents at one place, and then give access to people as in when they need it, or just email them. You're saving paper, you're saving the environment, and you don't have to deal with piles of paper. And unlike me, when I was a secretary 2 years ago, I had literally had to get a roller bag, and I used to have all the papers in there, and every meeting I used to go with the roller bag as if I'm headed to the airport. And sometimes there are just so many papers and they all look the same, and it's just too much paper everywhere. So it can easily get you lost. But now it's easier. Another thing you need to do is, this is what I did, and my current clubs does it too. When you have a club meeting, it is a good idea to introduce a new format. And now you're going to hate me probably, because I'm going to introduce new work for you. But this is going to help you in the long run. That is taking the minutes meeting for your regular club meeting. And I'm getting ready to show you in just a little bit what does the meeting minutes look like. It's just one of the ways that we created it. Doesn't have to be the same exact way. Basically, that helps you who attended the meeting, who has been consistently taking up on roles, and who has been not attending the meeting. Now, remember a few minutes ago, I said secretary is a role that can help VPM and treasurer. So here's how you're going to help. By taking minutes of meeting for your club meetings, you're going to let VPM know that this is the club meeting roster, and these are the people who've been regularly attending, and these are the people who've been disappeared or not being there or have been not participating. So that's when VPM is going to reach out to them to check on them if everything's okay, and if when is the good time, when are they planning to come back, or when is the time that they would like to renew. And in return, as a chain reaction to that, you are helping treasurer, because what does a treasurer do? Gets the money. So once the people who are not attending the meeting would like to come back or renew as a part of your club or a member, they would help the treasurer achieving the goals of collecting the money and getting them on board, getting them on the roster in club toastmastersinternational.org as an official member by adding their dues. So you're going to not only just help yourself or help one role, but you're going to impact many other roles. Along with this, a very important thing, executive club meeting, that is called district executive club meeting, meaning that district executive club officers meeting. So during the district executive meeting, executive club officers meeting, that meeting happens only between your club officers. It's just like having a leadership meeting where you plan, strategize, discuss the lesson learned, and how would you like to grow your club, and how would you like for them to achieve their goals. and so on. So during that time, you have to definitely and mandatorily make notes. That is called executive committee meeting, executive club officers meeting. People call it different things, but basically that's the meeting of your entire club officers. And it is very important that you not only make the minutes of meeting, but also create an agenda before the meeting, send it to your president to make sure he or she's okay with that, and then store the agenda, minutes of meeting at a secure place in a folder or so on, because at the end of the year, this is what is going to help the entire club officers team to know where they were at the beginning of the year, how much have they achieved, and so on. Please, can we go to the next slide? Now, these are the ready responsibilities for you all to know what you would do as a club secretary. I know we have manual, you'll have to read a lot of pages. This is just right out in a table format. I'm a very visual person, and if you tell me the bullet points, it stays in my head. So that is why I prefer this thing this way. Taking the club meeting minutes, that's optional, but taking the leadership club officers team meeting, it's mandatory. You need to make sure that you organize all the club records and papers, or all the club folders in files in a correct place that you can access at any time. Always remember to have a backup, because technology is something you can never trust. Making sure that on toastmaster.org, you need to update your officers list. And that is one DCP point. That's easy DCP point. That is, so make sure that there's a timeline for it, know the timeline, and make sure to update your new officer's name as soon as the election takes place at the end of the year. Circulate the attendance sheet. Now that we are virtual, it is a good idea to just write down the names and maintain a roster for every club meeting. Again, that's going to help your VPM know who's attending, who's not attending. Make sure you can have a guest book. If you don't, since we are in a virtual setup, we cannot have a physical guest book. It's a good idea to just email your guest and get contact details from there. How would you get their email? Eventbrite. They're going to register for your meeting on Eventbrite or on Zoom, and that's where you're going to get their email address. Making sure that we understand all the basic parliamentary procedure. We're going to come back to that at a later point. Elmer has a little bit of screenshot. It would tell you what is a parliamentary procedure. You don't have to memorize it, just know it. Order supplies as needed. Nowadays, we have Pathways as virtual, so there's not going to be a lot of manuals or supplies that you'll have to order. But sometimes best speaker or best evaluator, those kind of ribbons, or the pins, or any of the Toastmasters stationery to award people, that could be a good idea. Also remember, Toastmasters sends a leader letter every month. What is it all about? That leader letter is going to tell you a lot of things that's going on in Toastmasters as a whole. And since you are a leader of your club, you're going to get that leader letter. So it is your duty to be up to date on a leader letter and update your president and your club as to if there's something specific or new things going on, or if there is any new incentives like Ramona mentioned, or if there's any new convention or any new meeting that's coming up. I also mentioned that you are one of the privileged people out of your club officers to be able to vote for international business meetings, and that is international convention. You will be able to facilitate your members for the base camp, making sure they're doing well, helping your VPE to keep a track who's participating and who's not with your club officers, with your club meeting that you have it regularly, and when you take the meeting minutes. Can we go to the next slide, please? So this is an example of one of the club meeting minutes. Again, this is optional. This format is a personal format. You don't have to follow this. Like I said, writing the minutes of meeting for your club meeting helps you know who is joining your meeting, which members are disappeared or are missing, who can VPM reach out, who are the old members who have not renewed, and we can have them back as a renewed member. Also helps your treasurer And in addition, also helps your VPE, because this is going to tell you how many people are taking up on roles and how many are not. So your VPE will be able to encourage people to achieve their Toastmaster goals. With that said, if you have any confusion or questions, you are welcome to reach me, and I'll be very happy to answer any questions you have at no additional cost. So I'm going to put my email address in the chat while Elmer is going to go ahead with Treasurer and Sergeant at Arms session. Over to you, Elmer.
Thank you, Nihal. And as we proceed with the rest of the training, just be aware that the information that we are sharing is according to what Toastmasters recommends. Now, it's possible that your club may be doing something slightly different, and for most cases, that's okay. But just understand that the information that Nihal presented and what I will be going through is basically what Toastmasters recommends. So let's start with the treasurer role. The treasurer is extremely important to the club because you maintain the club's bank account. It is up to you as a treasurer to write the checks for any expenditures. I know most clubs today, rather than having a checkbook, use a debit card, and that's perfectly fine. And you also will deposit the members' dues and other money that the club may receive. So your responsibility is to serve as the accountant for the club. You're also responsible for submitting dues, membership dues to Toastmasters World Headquarters. Now, Toastmasters has recently allowed other club officers to do the same thing, but you as a treasurer have the prime responsibility to submit the dues to Toastmasters International as you get them from members. If you are a club that has your own tax ID number, you will be responsible for any necessary tax documents. Now, most clubs don't have that. Most clubs are under the general tax number for Toastmasters International. And as such, you will not have any tax documents or any tax responsibilities. But there are a few clubs that do have their own tax identification number. If that's the case for your club, then that responsibility will shift to you. Timeliness is extremely important when you're dealing with club finances. And by timeliness, I mean there should not be a delay when you get a member's money and the time that you submit that to Toastmasters International to pay the dues. I actually recommend no more than 24 hours. If you have money from a member longer than that, I think that's a problem. So make sure that you are very timely when you receive members' money and get it handled as quickly as possible. The same thing with any records for the club. Make sure that that is taken care of quickly, because most problems occur when the treasurer is not handling that responsibility in a timely manner. Let's move on to some more specific responsibilities for the treasurer. And as Nihal had mentioned, we're breaking this up into what's happened at the club meeting, outside the club meeting, and at the executive committee meeting. So you're responsible for preparing financial activity based on what happens in the club. That's your responsibility. Reporting on the club finances, that will be both as requested at the club meeting and definitely at the executive committee meeting. And just to continue to mention the executive committee meeting, that's the 7 club officers plus the immediate past president. The treasurer responsible for collecting the membership dues, preparing a club budget, and then also responsible for the club or the bank signature card. And I would suggest, if you have not taken the opportunity to get the signature card cleaned up, do that. General rules say that the club president and the treasurer should be the two people that are on the bank's signature card. You want to make sure that you don't have any old names on the card that have access to the bank account. So in general, it should be the president and the treasurer are the two that are responsible for the bank account. You're responsible for submitting new member applications. Once again, this is a timeliness thing. Make sure that that is done on a timely basis. And then, once again, text for club expenses. Depending on the structure of your club, you may have some expenses. Some clubs actually have to pay a fee for the space that they're using. You as the treasurer would be responsible for getting that submitted. You may have other expenses for your club, depending on your club structure. But once again, you would take care of those responsibilities. Financial records we talked about. You want to reconcile your checking account. Make sure you're tracking all the other expenditures that are occurring. And then any financial correspondence comes to you, or should come to you as the treasurer. It may initially go to the secretary, for example, but you want to make sure that you receive a copy of any bank statements and any other financial correspondence that comes to the attention of the club. And then finally, as a club leader, you, along with the other club officers, should be working on the club success plan. So those are some of the things that you as the treasurer are responsible for. I have the screenshot. This is a spreadsheet that has, that I actually can give you a copy of, a blank copy, of a way to track the expenses and the member payments and the payments made to Toastmasters for member. This is a single page spreadsheet. I will share that as part of the club resources later on. But this is an example of the information that you want to keep track for your club. Some clubs are using Free Toast Host, which is great. Within Free Toast Host, you have functions that are available as a treasurer that will help you not only collect or remind members of dues, but also follow up. You can actually send notices. You can follow up on members that have not paid their dues yet. You can send out the initial invoice, and all this is a function that is under Free Toast Host. Now, some clubs are using Free Toast Host, some are not, but this is a great facility within Free Toast Host that can make your job as a treasurer quite a bit easier, especially now as we are approaching our membership due cycle in preparation for October. I'm going to switch gears now, and I thought I saw a couple of things coming through the chat. Let me just double check the chat.
All good, Elmer.
Okay, good. Thank you, Nihal. Let's talk about Sergeant at Arms. Sergeant at Arms, another very important role for the club. The primary role description for the Sergeant at Arms is to keep track of the club's physical property, such as the banner, lectern, timing device, if we have it in other club meeting materials. The Sergeant at Arms should be the first person to arrive to make sure that the meeting place is set up, and usually will be the last person to leave to make sure that any equipment that is stored is returned to the same place. Now, currently, we all know that we're meeting virtually. I don't think anyone is meeting in person right now. One of the recommendations that I have made is that instead of being responsible for the meeting place, one thing the Sergeant at Arms could do is be responsible for Zoom or for whatever technology that you're using to hold your meeting. That's a possible role for the Sergeant at Arms, since some of their responsibilities have shifted, given that we are in a virtual environment. So think about that. Another way that you can support your club is being responsible for your online technology like Zoom GoToMeeting, whatever, WebEx, whatever your club is using. Once again, this is based on meeting in person, but you're in charge of the meeting place itself. If that meeting place has to be changed, you're responsible for finding a new place along with other members of your club, and you can maintain contact with people so that they understand how you're using their space, and also communicate any changes to the members of your club. So let's go into a little bit more detail about the Sergeant at Arms. Once again, once we get to meet again in person, you would confirm the meeting reservations, the room reservations, make sure the room is available. Responsible for any supplies that are in the room. That might mean some clubs I know do coffee. That might mean getting the coffee pot started or whatever you do. Arriving early, as I said, set up the room, any materials that are needed. You and other officers should be greeting the guests. So that would be a responsibility for the Sergeant at Arms, getting the guest book signed, helping the Vice President membership with that responsibility. And most clubs, Sergeant at Arms can call the meeting to order. Once again, this is something that varies from club to club. This is on the chart because Toastmasters typically recommends that Sergeant at Arms starts the meeting, calls the meeting to order, makes any announcements about restrooms or anything like that that's needed. But some clubs do it differently. I know I'm in one club where the presiding officer, the president, calls the meeting to order. So, do what is necessary for your particular club. You may also be responsible for collecting any ballots for any votes. For example, the best table topic speaker or the best evaluator. You may need to collect the ballots, tally the votes, and announce the winner. And once again, pack up and store club materials as needed, and returning the space to the pre-meeting condition. And this one is actually very important, returning the space to the pre-meeting condition. I know of clubs who have lost access to their space because they didn't abide by that. They didn't return the room to the condition that they had found it before, left it slightly disorderly, and that's not the way that we want Toastmasters to do. So once we start meeting again, keep that one in mind, is make sure that after use of the room, stay behind, put it back into good order so that we are really good and friendly with the people that are lending the space, often with no cost. Coordinating the meeting space, that means if space change is necessary, Sergeant at Arms actually has a primary responsibility to find meeting space. And once again, that's not an issue today, but as we start to meet back, hopefully in the future, that will be the responsibility for the Sergeant at Arms. And you also may be able to, or be asked to chair a committee. For example, it may be related to open house or some other committee for the benefit of the club. So keep that in mind. That is generally your responsibility as Sergeant at Arms. And I'm going to ask Nihal to do the next session about review and getting us started.
Thank you, Elmer. So far, I'd like to quickly review before we get into this quiz. As a secretary, you're responsible for making sure that you are taking your leadership meeting minutes, creating the agenda for the leadership. You're also responsible for sending a proxy or voting during International Business Meeting at Toastmasters, AKA convention. You're also responsible for making sure that you're taking care of all the club records and files and making sure that you are preserving them. It is also a good idea as a secretary to take minutes of meeting for every club meeting. That's going to help your VPM, treasurer, and your VPE identifying their goals as to who is attending the meeting, who is taking up on all the roles, and who is not participating, and who needs to be reached for renewal. You also need to maintain the club roster, that is the attendance sheet, to let your leadership team know who is attending and who is not. It's also, in addition, you need to make sure that your club gets 1 DCP point by entering your new officer's name on toastmasters.org. And after doing all of this, you have to make sure that you are helping your VPM, VPE, VPPR, and your treasurer. With that said, I am going to start with a little quiz, and please, can we have the screen? So please make a use of your chat and tell me the answer to the first question. What officer role records what happens in the club? And I'll participate as well. I think it's president, because they just don't have to have the crown and look pretty. I think they need to do some work. Okay, I see a couple of answers. You always, oh, wow. Okay, looks like you all were paying attention, and your answer is, can we have the answer, please? It's going to be secretary. Thank you. Well done, I'm impressed. Next one up is, what officer role keeps an account of what happens financially and budgets for the future? It's easy. Your accountant, correct. Treasurer, wonderful, love it. Next one is, what officer role proctor of the club's property and the meeting location? I think it's secretary, isn't it? No? Oh my God, Elmer, I was not paying attention. I'm so sorry. The answer is SAA, Sergeant at Arms. Great, love it. Can we move on to the next slide? I love the participation. Great audiences. So club officer training, how do you get started if this is your first role? Very first thing you do is you attend district sponsor club officer training. In short, you attend TLI, which is what you're doing. You read materials. Now, let me tell you, sometimes, so when I joined Toastmaster and when I was a secretary, we used to get physical manuals. And so the first thought came to my mind was, first of all, I pay you, as in the Toastmaster. On top of that, you give me the homework to do, and I don't get paid for it. So that's why sometimes reading the information or informative material is not everyone's hobby. And that's why during this presentation, Elmer and I came up with the chart or the table, which is all the information or task or the actions that you need to do on your officer role is listed. But of course, I would still mention that it is a good idea as a suggestion to read materials as and when you have time. Meet with the outgoing executive team. I cannot stress enough on this one and the next one. You need to at least have 2 meetings before you start this role as a secretary. Now you're going to tell me, Nihal, it's already August and we've already started with the role. So is it a good advice? Yes, it is still a good advice. It's better late than never, right? So whoever was your previous secretary or treasurer or sergeant at arms, make sure you meet with them, know at least 2 things from them. One is where they're at and what worked the best for them. And second is what are the lessons learned. And once you do that, make sure that you meet with your current executive team, because that's the people you're going to work with. And when you're a leader, you need to make sure that you get along with everyone, because it takes a village to be successful, and you need to be a team member. And lastly, Distinguished Club Program and Club Success Plan. DCP program that I kept referring to, that is Distinguished Club Program. Distinguished Club Program is available as a part of your Club Success Plan. I recommend that Club Success Plan should be done at the beginning of your year and should be revisited every so often as and when your team needs it. secretary alone does not work or plan on work on a club success plan. It's the entire officers team. So make sure that you meet with your executive team, the outgoing one and the existing one. Make sure you attend TLI, read materials, and work on your club success plan. With that said, can we move on to next slide? All right, then that goes back to you, Elmer Hill. And I see Elmer is uploading some resources in the chat already.
Thanks, Nihal. So yes, I want to kind of conclude by talking about some of the resources that you have available to help you. Everyone should have at least gotten an email when you were appointed as an officer or elected as an officer that pointed you to download this book, the Club Leadership Handbook. Can I see either a show of hands or gesture of some kind that you have at least seen this book? I'm not going to ask if you read it. Okay, good. I see, good. I see a couple of people. Some people, I don't see an indication one way or another. Okay, good. We're getting a little bit better. So this is a very valuable resource for you. I would suggest if you choose not to read the entire book, at least read the part of the book that pertains to your particular role, because it gives you a lot of information about the overall structure of the club, but it also gives you detailed information about your role. So I would suggest at least look for that in the Leadership Handbook. 2, Distinguished Club Program and Club Success Plan. Nihal mentioned one of the responsibilities of the secretary is to submit the club officer list to Toastmasters International. And she made mention of one DCP point. Well, the whole DCP program is talked about in this document, the Distinguished Club Program and Club Success Plan. So that's another resource to take a look at, because there are other things that will help you get additional DCP points. For example, at least 4 officers getting trained at the TLI. That's 4 club officers getting trained at the summer TLI, which is happening now. I think this is the last one for District 117. And then there will be a winter TLI. If 4 officers get trained at both of those, you get a club DCP point. And then that puts you almost halfway of getting toward to be a distinguished club. So look for this document, the Distinguished Club Program and Club Success Plan. Now let's spend a little bit of time about Club Central. Now this one I'm going to ask pointedly, how many officers have logged into Toastmaster and at least looked at one or two of the options under Club Central? I'm waiting for an indication. Let's see, okay, I see Esther. Thank you, Esther. Nihal, certainly. Let's see, anyone else? Club Central.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Elmer. I see in the chat, there's Natalie, there is Craig, there is Hugo. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. There's Cindy, and there is Tim.
Okay, good. So definitely the majority have at least looked at Club Central. This, as a club officer, you want to make this a very primary resource for keeping track of the operation of the club. Now, some areas are more important to certain officer roles. For example, the club financials directly relates to the club secretary, whereas the club roster really should be used by all club officers from time to time, the club roster section. And then club achievements can be used by all. And then there would be those who have additional roles, such as the base camp manager role. Secretary will have that, president will have that. So there are additional roles that will be specific to each officer role. But you want to make it a very natural thing to go into Club Central to check on the operation of your club, depending on what officer role that you have. That will be where you find lots of information. And then if you see something that is not accurate, by all means, work with your club secretary first to get it changed, and if necessary, Toastmasters International. Because in my experience, a lot of misinformation comes about because some of the information in this area is not 100% accurate. So make sure that you're following what's going on and take steps to make sure it is accurate. Club Officer Tools is another one of these things that you can use that's part of the Leadership Central under Club Officer. And so if you don't have your Leadership Handbook, you actually can get it from here. You can also get some other things such as your Distinguished Club Program and Success Manual plan. That's under your Club Officer Tools. Once again, part of Toastmasters.org. And you can readily get there. Leader letter, Nihal talked about that. So the leader letter is monthly as a club officer. Make sure you're getting this. Once again, inaccurate email address is often the cause for why you may not be receiving this if we haven't gotten it. So make sure you check your records with Toastmasters.org so that you get this resource as well. And it's monthly. It has a lot of good information. The Charter of Motions Nihal covered earlier, but all club officers should have a basic understanding of parliamentary procedure. And this is a document that's available from the online Toastmasters store. I would suggest getting it. It's like a pocket card, very easy to do. It gives you some of the basics of just how a meeting should be run. And that should be really the model that you would want to use at the executive committee meeting for your club. And do we have time for questions? I see the red card up.
Yes, yeah, you have about 5 minutes left.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Josh. So let's in any questions that you would like to pose for myself or for Nihal, we are here to answer any questions that you might have, anything that you'd like to have any clarification on. All right, we have some experts here, so this is great, outstanding. And this is contact information. This is mine as well as Nihal, so feel free to use us as resources. We have a fair amount of experience in these officer roles, and we certainly are willing to help you even after today. So don't be a stranger. Let us help you out as we can.
Real quick, Elmer, there's one person on here, Lenora's iPhone. I don't know who that is. I'm trying to figure out who it is so that that person can get credit.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so Lenora, make sure you give us your club, if you can, in the chat. Give us your club and your officer role so that we can make sure that you get credit for this section. And I have posted several resources in the chat for everyone. Make sure you take a look at it. I have posted in the resources or in the chat that club dues template that I showed you earlier. There is a template for minute meetings if you choose to do that. Put a couple of things about Free Toast Host. One is some more information about using Free Toast Host for the treasurer for the dues. And then if you're not doing contactless payment, PayPal is a good option. And PayPal actually integrates very well into Free Toast Host with a payment button that you can use to collect dues, especially since you're not meeting, but you certainly want to have a way of collecting dues. So that's also posted into the chat as well.
Also, I would just like to add that secretary is not a it's not a difficult role, but it could be overwhelming if you were dealing with papers, because say for example, I'm not a paper person as much. But if you're comfortable with paper, maybe this is easier for you. It's just about being organized. More you're organized, more you have those separate folders on your computer or on your Google Docs with the names, and more you make sure that all of the correct documents are in the correct folder, you have nothing to worry about. You'll have everything available. So being organized is the key when you want to be a secretary. So if you want to be a secretary on a higher level, going for on a district level, the part of being a secretary, secretary's role comes under district administration manager. Of course, there are a lot of additional responsibilities, but if you're looking to go on a higher scope of the same role, that's what you can also think about in future. Just trying to give you some references.
Thank you, Nihal. And another thing to consider too, depending on the size of your club, if you're in a fairly small club, you're probably going to be the only person that is in the role. But if you belong to a large club, think about forming a small committee to work with you on your role. The Sergeant at Arms is a great example of putting together maybe a committee of 2 more people to work with you on some of the responsibilities once we start meeting together again. So that's an example of how you may be able to be the lead person, but have a couple of people working with you so you can share the workload of more than one person. And any of the officer roles, except for president actually, lends itself to having a committee of 1 to 2 people working with you to kind of split and share of the workload. So one important thing, I think Nihal covered this earlier, you don't have to operate in isolation in any of your roles with the club. Work with other officers, and if needed, think about having a small committee to work with you to share that workload with you. So it looks like we're about to join the